Hi everybody, so I promised you an update a while back, over 2 weeks ago. I was planning to do it earlier this week, and things just got crazy, and I've been crazy busy. I mean, you talk about busy before baby, after baby it's crazy busy, and my baby isn't even home yet. She's still in the NICU, but that's okay. I've been crazy busy with pumping for her, which I'll talk about in another video, but I wanted to get this update done, and I wanted to talk about my birth story, because, everyone who has a child has a birth story, and this is mine. So, let me start at the beginning. I was on hospital bed rest. I went to the routine ultrasound on February the 4th, and they discovered, they were trying to discover, Isabella. She hadn't shown us her spine for the past three ultrasounds, and finally they got a picture of her spine this time, but they also noticed something they hadn't noticed the last ultrasound in the 2 weeks prior, on the 20th, I believe. I'm not sure exactly, in January. But the scan 2 weeks prior to that one, they hadn't seen anything wrong with the cervix. It was fine. That time they found that my cervix had shortened quite a bit, and when I had gone in, then they discovered that I was 4 centimeters dilated, and the bag of waters was protruding into the birth canal with a little foot sticking into my vagina. So I had been admitted to the hospital on 100% bed rest. I couldn't even go to the bathroom on my own. I couldn't take a bath without sitting up or anything. I couldn't sit up at all. I couldn't even, do anything. I had to eat from a laying down position, which is really hard, because you have to feel around for the food, and then you're like, it's an experience. But I stayed on bed rest for about a week, from like Monday to Sunday. Sunday morning came along. My husband, he was about to get ready for church in a couple hours, because I told him, oh, you need to go to church, because, several people from the church had come and visited, and I thought he should go and at least attend church, because he hadn't attended it last week. So it would have been good to keep people like, okay, everything's fine. But let's see, 5:45-ish in the morning, the lab people came up to draw some blood, as they always do in every single morning that the whole time I stayed at the hospital. They came and drew blood at the exact same time every morning. So it was just another routine thing. So, since I had the gestational diabetes, they always would check with the blood draw that my levels, my sugar levels, which I think he said it was like 88 or something that morning, Sunday. But the guy came in from the lab to draw some blood that 5:45, and I have a phobia of needles, okay? I have a huge phobia of needles. I mean, after they stick me and it's all done, then I'm like, oh, that wasn't so bad. But, I really hate IVs, because those really hurt, and it takes a while for them to put it in, especially when they stick you and then they can't find the vein, and so they have to move to the other hand. My hand's still sore. I still got bruises from the IVs, but my hands are dry. So anyway, guy from the lab. I have a phobia of needles. Where was I? Yeah, I have a phobia of needles. So when he stuck me, I tensed up. I grabbed the other side of the bed, and he stuck me, and I tensed up, and then I felt this pop. It was in my butt, actually, but I knew it was inside my womb. So, I felt this pop, and then I was like, oh, this is probably just a kick. But then I thought, in this split seconds that it happened, I thought, you know, this is kind of what happened with Naomi, wasn't it? And then, sure enough, 3 to 5 seconds later, a lot of water came out. And I knew I hadn't peed, because I didn't ever have a problem with my bladder. So I was like, oh crap. And I grabbed the blankets and I was like, uh-oh. And the guy from the lab said, do you want me to get the nurse? And I said, yes, get the nurse right now. And so he finished up what he was doing and he left the room. And then, like, half a minute later, the nurse came in and asked what was up. And I said, I think my water's broke. And she's like, okay, we'll check and see. And so she lifted the blankets off of me and saw that it was all wet. The bed was soaked. So then she said, okay, well, I'll get the other nurse who will do the tests with the cotton swab thing and test to see if it's amniotic fluid. So she left and got the other nurse who came in and did the test and left, and she said, oh, well, my husband, he came over because when I said my water was broke, he's like jumped up immediately and came to the other side of the bed by my side and held my hand, and because I was kind of freaking out. I wasn't like scary freaking out, but I was very nervous about how the baby was doing. Anyway, but the other nurse came in and she did the test and she told us, oh, you know, we checked to see if there's like this fern thing in the water or some fern thing. That kind of like when you check for ferning, I guess, when you're ovulating, when you do the spit test and stuff and look through a microscope. So she left with that test, and then the first nurse came in, who was really nice. I really liked that nurse. I don't remember her name, but she was short, and I guess she was Hispanic, but I liked her a lot. She was really nice. And anyway, she came in and she put the fetal heart monitor on me, and she's like, we're gonna keep an eye on the baby now since your water's broke, because you know they had been keeping watch on the baby like 4 times a day, like the non-stress tests that they do. I'd never had a non-stress test, regular one, before, so I'm not sure exactly what they do in a non-stress test, but from what I hear, it's just fetal monitoring for a certain amount of time. But they put on the heart monitor for the baby, and sigh of relief. Her heartbeat was really going strong still. Then the doctor came in and he's like, oh, well, your waters did break. That was confirmed by the test, and she's still breech because well, I told him I still felt kicking down in the pelvis area, so I knew she was still breech, which meant I would most definitely have a C-section, because hospitals and doctors nowadays are not trained in how to do breech births safely. It's a lost art, doing breech births. But C-section, they were going to do C-section, but he's like, we'll just hold off a little bit until at least this afternoon. We'll see what happens. And so then another nurse midwife came in, and she was going to look into the birth canal and the vagina and see my cervix and see what she could see. So they put the little tool in me and opened it up, and every time they stuck it in there, a big gush of water would come out. So every time she moved the little tool, I felt just water pouring out of me, like lots and lots of water. So every time, because I was lying down, all the water was still tilted back towards the top of my womb. So every time she would put the tool in, I would tense up and water would gush out. Though I tried to relax, I really did. So I relaxed it, and she looked in there and she's like, I can't see anything of your cervix because there's so much water, but I do see a foot, and it's coming down through the birth canal. So that changed the whole scene immediately, because then the doctor said, oh, we're going to have to do the C-section right now, because the baby is obviously coming down in getting born right this minute. So we're going to have to hurry up and do the C-section. So I was prepped for the emergency C-section, and it was complete craziness after that. Like 3 people worked on me at the same time. One lady was shaving me, and another was doing a bunch of stuff, blood pressure. Another one was telling my husband and giving him his gown and cap and telling him a little bit about what the procedure was going to be like and what he would do and what would happen to me. And they were telling me, oh, you're going to have a spinal, which is kind of like an epidural, but I think it's a little different because it's immediate, and it's immediate numbness, and which I think they do for emergency C-sections in that hospital. But I was going to have a spinal, which freaked me out more than the health of the baby, really, because, my phobia of needles. So, I was prepped for the C-section. They started wheeling me out. My husband, he was told he can't bring video cameras at all. He can't bring any video cameras into the room. Just a photo camera. And so he would wait outside the operating room until I was all ready to start the C-section. So I was wheeled into the operating room on my own at first, and the nurse, well, the doctor there, she was telling me, the anesthesiologist, she was telling me, oh, we need to give you your spinal. And they were trying to do it while I was lying down. So I would turn on my side, and the nurse would help me, and she's like, you need to scrunch up like this. And she was trying to give me the spinal, and she's like, you need to scrunch up some more. And I was scrunching up as much as I could. I was curled up in the fetal position and everything, and she just couldn't do the spinal while I was lying down. So she called the doctor and asked him, can she just sit up for a little while we do the spinal? And so then I sat up, and they did the spinal just fine. And I was like, I can't. Needles, I hate needles. And the nice nurse, she was in front of me holding my shoulders, keeping them down, and she was telling me, you're doing great, you're doing good, everything's gonna be fine and stuff. I really liked her. And so then she gave me the spinal, and she told me everything she was doing. She's like, oh, I'm gonna wipe you down, I'm gonna do this, do that. And I just said, just warn me right before you're gonna poke me with the needle. And she's like, okay. Now, for spinals, they don't give you, it's like a shot. It numbs the area immediately. It's not like a epidural where they, I think this is what, it's not like an epidural where they stick a catheter in. It's more like a shot, I think. So she warned me right before she stuck me with a needle. And she's like, there's going to be some burning and stinging. And so I was like, ah. But I didn't move. I stayed as perfectly still as I could because I didn't want her to mess up and get me in the wrong spot. Because that would probably be really bad and really hurt and, you know, not be very good. So I stayed as still as I could, even though I wanted to flinch and squirm and do whatever I wanted to do. Do what my body wanted me to do. But I stayed very still. And she got it done, no problem. And then I lay down, and almost immediately my feet started getting numb and tingly. And so they had me lay down exactly how I was going to lay. And she's like, okay. So she took this little metal circle thing and she put it on my cheek and said, this is what it feels like. It was really, really cold. She's like, it's really, really cold. It was like 5 minutes later. I was still tingling, but she's put it on my cheek and she put it on the top of my stomach. And she's like, is it the same temperature or colder? And I'm like, it's the same temperature. Is it colder or the same temperature? And I was like, it's colder on my cheek. So then that told her that I was ready to get started on being operated on. So they stuck me. I had the IV in my arm, and already, though nothing was hooked up to it, so they hooked me up with an IV, and then they started putting the sheets up, the blue sheets, you know, up higher than I could see, and my hands were out like a cross, and I was just laying there like, ooh, this feels nice. This is so tingly, and so I feel just so relaxed, because it felt like this heavy blanket was laying on top of me, and it was so warm and cozy from like here down, all the way down. So it was just like, I just feel so comfortable. So once they had the sheets up, then my husband came in and sat down by my head. He couldn't see either over the sheets. And so they were getting me ready to cut me open. And it took, from the time that I got my blood drawn to the time I was in the operating room, it probably was about an hour, because they checked me at like 6 o'clock that my waters had broken, and at 7 o'clock I was ready for the C-section. So I couldn't see what was going on. I could kind of feel, you know, pressure and stuff when they were like doing, it sounded like vacuuming or something. But it was like a lot of pulling and tugging on my tummy, and like he had stuck a vacuum hose on and was swirling it around or something, like trying to get the baby in the right position or something. That's what it felt like anyway. So it was like this vacuum on my stomach moving around and pulling it and tugging at it and stuff. And then there was this I'm trying to remember, because everything was such a blur that day, especially in the operating room, because everything was happening so fast. But I really mostly remember the vacuum sensation on my tummy. And, and, well, my husband, he was holding my hand the whole time. And, we were just waiting for them to say that she was delivered. So I heard one of the doctors say, you know, it was like recording, they were recording it. So he was saying, we're about to start the cesarean section, and because of the I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was mostly like we're starting the C-section because the fluids have ruptured. And then another doctor said something about, 30 weeks and 2 days. She had a 24 3-day birth, so and it was a cervix opening, and so we think maybe it might be incompetent cervix. So that really stuck out to me. The whole thing, besides the birth of the baby, the thing that stuck out to me was that he mentioned that I probably have incompetent cervix, which would make sense, but more of that later. So this vacuuming thing was going on, and then there was a lot of nothingness that I really felt, and then the anesthesiologist was talking to me, and she's like, oh, they're about to start, and the baby's about to be born, and so I didn't really feel anything, but she was telling me, oh, the baby's about to be born, and, so I felt a lot of pushing, like pressing on my belly, and pulling, and stuff like that, and I'm sorry, I really can't describe it, it's so hard. I mean, I hate C-sections because of that, because you feel so detached from everything. You're not participating, you're just waiting. So aggravating, but there was a lot of pressure and pulling and pushing, and then there was this big pull, like something just went ploop, and then I heard some popping noises, and then oh man, I heard Isabella scream. I heard this wonderful scream. It was so awesome. I was so happy. It was like, oh my goodness, this is so worth it. Because the whole time I was thinking, it's too early, I'm so scared of having a preemie. What if are her lungs developed enough? Is she going to be able to breathe? Because that was a huge thing with Naomi. She couldn't breathe. And they tried to help her breathe. Her heart was beating, but she couldn't breathe. So her lungs weren't developed enough. So it's like, did the steroid shot work? Please let it work. And when I heard that cry, the first cry, I was like, oh my goodness, she is alive. I'm so happy. This is awesome. And it was like this huge relief. I don't know, it's hard to describe. I was just so happy and relieved, and then I was a little apprehensive because she's really early. She's only 30 weeks and 2 days old, gestational wise. But when I heard that scream, and she wouldn't stop screaming, and I just knew she was okay. I knew she was going to be fine. and that was a huge relief. And I just couldn't stop smiling. I cried. I was like shedding tears. I just looked at my husband and I was like, our eyes connected and we were like, she's born. She's alive. Yes. She sounds really healthy. And they brought her over to the table, I assume. I couldn't see anything that was going on. I could only hear. But then they called my husband over to where she was so he could meet our little daughter. And so he left my side, but I was like, go see her and tell me all about her. So he left and he brought the little camera with him and took a bunch of pictures, which I showed you in the previous video. And then well, they told us the procedure. The pediatrician had come in to the operating room and was assessing her to see how well she was doing. Since she was a NICU, an early baby, she was going to be going to the NICU, and so if she was in trouble, they were just going to take her away straight to the NICU, and I wasn't going to be able to see her until I went to go see her in the NICU. And if he assessed her and saw that she was okay and she was fine and she was breathing on her own, everything was good, she could, breathe, they would clean her up and a little bit and wrap her up, and we could look at her for a few minutes. I could see her right there in the operating room. So he assessed her, and she was fine. She was like screaming up a storm. So she was perfectly healthy. And so they wrapped her up and brought her over, and my husband came back over to me, and I got to see her and say hi. My little Isabella, meet her. And so happy to finally get to see her. And I thought, oh, I wish you could have stayed in longer, but I'm so happy you're here, because now the fun starts. And I'm so happy you're healthy, and it's like, just so happy. So then after a few minutes of meeting her and seeing her and taking like a dozen or so pictures together, the nurse took a few pictures of us, Nate took some pictures of me, and then they took her away and brought her to the NICU, and my husband, he squeezed my hand and said he was going to go with her, and I'm like, yes, go with her. And I would stay and finish getting sewn up and stuff. And so they left, and then it was I just lay there, stared at the ceiling, and just relaxed, because, that spinal was like, made me feel so happy. And they started a Pitocin to, at that time, after the baby was born, they started Pitocin to help my uterus shrink, contract and stuff, shrink to normal size. And then I just waited around, just thinking how beautiful she looked, and how she was so happy, and how she sounded when she came out, and just happy thoughts like that. Yay, she's doing really well. So after about 30 minutes or so, then I thanked the doctor. He's like, okay, you're all done. And there was a lot of suction going on, I heard. My husband, he said when he got up to go see the baby on the table, then he had glanced and saw my cut open, and it kind of freaked him out, like, to see me cut open like that. But they sewed me back up, and the scar is... My husband has trouble seeing it now, and it's only been, like, what, 3 weeks? No, 2.5 weeks. But it's healing really well. But, let's see. I went to the recovery room. I still couldn't move my legs or anything. And I just lay there for about 2 hours. The nurse there was another girl there who had had her C-section, and it was a little boy, but he was a normal full-term birth. So I just waited around until my... Ow! Cat! Stop scratching me. Scratched my leg. Sorry. I just waited around until my legs, I could move my legs. And it started with my feet. I could wiggle my feet. Ooh. Ooh. Start wiggling my feet. And I could wiggle my toes. And then I could lift my leg up and lift my knees up. And then my husband came down after about 2 hours. I was just laying there feeling awesome. And my husband came after laying there for 2 hours. Let's see, it was like 10 o'clock. And they brought me up to the NICU in the bed. And I got to hold my little Isabella. She was so tiny. And they took some more pictures. And she was just so cute. She has really, really dark hair. I mean, I was surprised since my husband has blonde hair. But her hair is really dark, and it looks kind of curly because, well, we gave her a bath the other day, and her hair was like, when it dried, it was sticking up in all directions. Because it looked curly for some reason. It looked curly a little bit, even though it's just a little bit of hair. It's a lot of hair for a baby. So it looked curly to me, but it's kind of dark, maybe just a little bit lighter than mine. Kind of a medium brown. And we can't tell the color for eyes yet, of course, because most babies are born with slate blue eyes, kind of a deep blue. Her eyes look kind of deep blue, which it said it could take up to a year before her permanent eye color state comes in. So we're not sure on her eye color yet, but she was so pretty. The nurses keep telling me how she's such a cute little baby, and you know, just so proud. Such a proud mommy. And I'm so happy she's doing so good. So anyway, I think that is pretty much all of my birth story. Like I said before, what the doctor said about incompetent cervix, how it opened without any contractions that I felt or any kind of signs of preterm labor. I mean, that's how it happened with Naomi. When I look at the signs that had happened with Isabella, I think, wow, this really is the same thing that happened with Naomi. Because when the cervix opened, even though they say Naomi was born because of placental abruption, I know because the cervix opens, because the midwife told me that infection had set into behind the placenta and the uterine wall, that an infection had come in there and formed a bunch of blood clots and caused the placenta to abrupt. Well, how did that infection get in there? They weren't sure about that time. But now, since the doctor mentioned incompetent cervix, I'm like, huh. Well, that kind of explains why the infection would come in, because, you know, the cervix is the barrier to the bacteria from the outside. And if it opens, then infection can get in. And so that's probably how the infection came in for Naomi's abruption. And I had had no signs of preterm labor with that one either. Except for the last 4 hours. 3-4 hours with back pains, lower back pains, and then in the last hour, the water breaking and the contractions happening, starting to come on. Like, boom, 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 boom. No rest in between. By then it was too late. So, but I had had symptoms before then with the discharge happening. I had gone to my appointment the 30th. I'd gone to my last OB appointment for prenatal, regular appointment on the 30th of January. And that was the day I had noticed some abnormal discharge. But since that morning of the appointment that day, that's when it started. And so I had just made a bowel movement and thought, oh, it's from the bowel movement. Because that happens too. You get a little more discharge when you push a little harder. But, other than that, there was no signs. I had that sign with Naomi too, with the discharge. About 5 days before she was born, on the 2nd, is when the discharges happened. And then it just continued for the next 5 days, but I thought it was normal discharge. You get all kinds of discharge in pregnancy. And, but apparently it was stop that, cats. Apparently it was the cervix losing the mucus plug. So I think that discharge on the 30th, because I had a lot of it from the 30th of January to the 4th, when they discovered my cervix was 4 centimeters opened. And that was 6 days after the discharge that I first noticed. So it really could have happened again with Isabella. So it's kind of scary. Stop that. Sorry. Cats are starting to fight with each other next to me. Aren't you? Aren't you fighting, huh? Hey, come here. Be famous. Look at the TV. Ha ha ha. This is Sylvie, otherwise known as Silver. But anyway, so I really think that I have incompetent cervix based on all these things that have been happening for this. Stop it. For this pregnancy. A week before having the discharge and no other signs, and then the cervix being open with no contractions. So next pregnancy, if I get pregnant again sometime within the next, hopefully, 2 years, maybe. If I get pregnant again, I am going to ask, most definitely, I'm going to mention this to the doctor, to the midwife, or OB, or whatever. I'm going to say, look, this is what happened with both my pregnancies, and I want to know, what do I have to do to, do I have to have a cerclage, I think that's what you call it, a cerclage to prevent the cervix from opening on its own, because apparently it likes to open after a certain time, and, what is it? Why is that? So, do we need to do a cerclage for this pregnancy? So, that's what I'm going to do next time, probably. I have no idea what a cerclage is like. But I hear some things about it that it's kind of painful and stuff. So, and there's a lot of extra things you have to do, like no exercise, and some people are on like modified bed rest for the rest of the pregnancy and can't do a lot of standing up or any kind of exercises or, you know, stuff like that. Cannot stand up or walk for long periods of time. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about that. Mention that because anyway. So that is my birth story for Isabella, born February the 10th at 7:12 in the morning, Eastern time. So I hope this whole time this video has been working, because I've never taped outside before. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll probably update again soon with updates on the NICU. Hopefully I can get this update uploaded, because the internet is being very naughty and keeps cutting out. So I've been having big problems with the internet. I hate this DSL. If we ever get out to our own place, we're going to get cable. But anyway, thank you for watching, and good luck to you, those pregnant, with your birth stories, your labors and deliveries. You know, I never went through labor except for 2 hours with Naomi, and that wasn't real labor. That was preterm labor, so I have no idea what labor is like, except for my preterm labor was extremely painful and had no break and everything else crappy like that. So I have no idea what, I kind of do know what it feels like, but I haven't had any labor this pregnancy. I've had some contractions, but they were so small. They were hardly little, they were just tiny little blips on the monitor screen. I mean, I felt them. I felt like this squeezing, tightening, but I hadn't felt actual, like, where you have to breathe. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. You know. Anyway, I want to show this kitty. She doesn't want to be shown. Isn't this a pretty kitty? That's a Willow, Pussy Willow. But anyway, thank you for watching, and love you guys. Bye.